What did we talk about on today's episode? We talked about pulling your ripcord. And if you don't know what a ripcord is, it's the thing that you pull to launch your parachute to stop you from crashing into the ground. But seriously, on today's episode, we did talk about that. We talk about the 5 ways to basically get unstuck and into momentum to build the business and life that you want. In a pretty short format that's really powerful and practices that are used across the board at every single level. And I guarantee you that one of these will resonate with you for you to put into practice. And so I cover all of that in today's episode, plus a little bit more. So I'm going to keep this intro super short because I'd rather you listen to the episode than listen to the intro. So let's cue the intro. Oh, wait, this is the intro, but now we'll listen to the clean intro. Let's cue the kind of podcast intro, and then we'll get into the episode. Go. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show, and I'm stoked to be here. What are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about something near and dear to my heart, something that I go through and I'm going through right now, something that a lot of people do, and I talk about it all the time, and it applies to everybody. And why your business isn't performing the way you'd like it. Now, I don't think there's ever a point where I will sit down and be like, okay, it's all perfect. Totally probably never going to happen, where I'm like, I got it. Like, my job now is just to exist and breathe air. Like, I'm always going to want to improve upon my business and improve upon my life, right? But there's the inverse of that, where I realize I'm on the right track, things are going well, and I want them to keep going. But the other side of that is I feel exhausted. I feel overwhelmed. I feel like nothing's working and I'm frustrated. And that's the part that we're going to talk about today. So the frame here is why our businesses aren't performing the way that we'd like it. Not because we have everything figured out and it's a matter of time, but we feel off. We feel tilted. We feel stressed. We feel scarce. We feel a lot of things. And this one, I have to give 100% full credit to Alex Sharpen. Alex is an amazing man, a dear friend of mine, and he says this all the time. And he says, we don't have the results in our business that we want because we haven't become the person required in order to receive those results. Now, if you asked me or said that to me 15 years ago, I would have just said bullshit. No questions asked. You're full of it. It's just about hustle. It's just about grind. And boy, oh boy, 15 years later, do I have a very different perspective than I did back then about what it takes. And I know now that there are many, many levels to this game. Like, I am successful, but I have friends that make me look like a kindergartner. They're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And there are so many levels between me and them, but it always boils down to repracticing the same things, but getting a deeper understanding or a better ability to use the tools in our toolbox. And they are walking testaments that the results that come are a byproduct of who they are. The work that they're putting in, the practices that they have, the discipline that they have, the tools that they use, the strategies that they follow, the way that they lead teams, the way that they lead themselves. And so it's something that comes up all the time. Now, personally, up until a couple of years ago, when I would get stuck, I would spiral. And a lot of you that listen to this podcast know that I struggled with addiction. I had an opiate addiction after some crazy injuries. I also struggled with bulimia. I struggled with orthorexia. I had basically every way I could distract myself from feeling something, I would go down the road. And so when I would be in business, I would have momentum, but then I would start to stop doing the things that were getting me there, which would then derail my progress, and I would start to self-sabotage. And then when I was in the spiral, I felt stuck. Like, I remember days and nights and weeks and months where all I did was sit on the couch and watch TV because it literally felt like I couldn't do anything different. And I couldn't do anything different. And that wasn't true. The truth is there was a lot of things I could do differently, but I was missing just some crystal clear, simple ripcords to pull to get me into action. I was missing the perspective to keep me going to where I wanted to go. And now, you fast forward many, many years later and 20 years of doing this and many students and talking to literally thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs at every level. And it really boils down to a couple of the same places that we can focus our energy and focus our attention to find out what that next step is, to take the step to build that version of ourselves, or to institute a practice that will allow us to receive the result, or focus on the thing that we need to focus on to get to that next level. And on today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you, and let me count them, the five easiest ways to start to align ourselves to become the person, or to create the processes, systems, or containers that build that person that will achieve the results that we want to achieve in business. But before we do that, in typical fashion of a Monday episode, I have to practice what I preach, and I have to practice celebrating my own wins. And so today, I'm going to practice celebrating my wins, and I'm going back, like way back to the very beginning of the podcast, which, by the way, mind blown. The first review of the podcast came in on March 29th of 2020. March 29th of 2020. And it's nuts to me that since March, we have recorded, I think this is episode 197. I've recorded a lot of podcasts, and I fall more in love with it every day. And so my hope is that you love it as well, and it's working, and it's something you recommend and something you refer to friends. And if there's something that I'm not doing on this show or not covering and you want me to cover, please DM me on Instagram. And for those of you listening, the hundreds of you that have DM'd me, you know I respond every single time. It's me personally. I run my social. I want to hear from you. I want to answer your questions. I want to help you unlock the next level of your business. And so I want you to let me know what I can do. But today I'm going to read 3 reviews from the very, very beginning of the podcast, and newsflash, confession time. One of the first reviews was me. I reviewed my own show, because if I can't love myself, how can anybody else love me? But the first one is such a refreshing perspective on business. Everything he talks about is going deep in relationships with yourself and in business, treating your customers like actual humans and making a difference in their lives. That's how people choose your brand over anyone else. George is a freaking marketing wizard. His thoughts will definitely... I think the rest of that one cut off. Oh, there it goes. His thoughts will definitely impact your business if you listen, understand, and execute. Thank you, Tyler. And then we got a must listen from J. Rods Corp. You must subscribe to this podcast. Tapping into George's mind can literally change your business. If you implement what he teaches, this is gold. And then I'm going to do this. I'm going to read my own review. I left a review on this podcast on March 29th of 2020. And I said, if you can't love yourself, who else will? 9 years in the making, and I'm proud to announce that I finally did it. The podcast is live, and yes, I love myself, which is why I am reviewing myself, because I had wanted to launch this podcast for 9 years before I actually did it, and I am just incredibly proud of myself for actually launching the podcast. So, now, let's get back to the topic at hand. What are the 5 areas or 5 ripcords or 5 ways that we can basically start to get crystal clear and align ourselves to who we have to be or who we're building to become to get the results we want in our business? So there's 5 of them. Number 1 is space. And there's a really common phrase and a common saying that's thrown around all the time, is you can't read the label from inside the bottle, right? And so what do we mean by that? Is that when we're overwhelmed, when we're stressed, when we have scarcity coming up, when things aren't working, when we need a momentum shift, the worst place to be is in the weeds, because when you're in it, you cannot see outside of it. You can only see what's right in front of you. And a lot of the times it doesn't allow us to see the full big picture. And so we need to create space. We need to pull a ripcord so we can get to the 10,000 foot view of your business and what's being worked on. Sometimes you can, but most of the time, we can't see the solutions because we're too close to the problem. So when we say this space thing, what does that mean? Sometimes that means in the middle of the day, like when I'm done with this podcast, closing the laptop and going for a 1-hour walk. Sometimes that means, even though I feel like I have thousands of things to do, but my head's not in it, going to the beach and jumping in the lake. Sometimes that means grabbing coffee with my best friend and sharing my perspective. Sometimes that means when I want to do everything, sitting there in stillness and silence and practicing stillness is the best way. But we do not get clarity ever by stacking more on top. And so if you imagine a food, like a pile of food on a plate, right? You imagine that you have this plate of food and consider it's Thanksgiving and the entire plate is covered. And I'm making this analogy up off the top of my head, so bear with me. The entire plate is covered in food, right? You got turkey, you got mashed potatoes, you got stuffing, you got everything. But there's these personalized plates, right? And somebody says, hey, George, what does your plate say? And I can't see the plate, right? The worst thing I can do is go stack more food on top of it, because that's just going to make the message on the plate further and further away. The best thing I can do is to either remove the food from the plate or start to eat it and then read what's there. And it's the same thing with challenges in our business. If you're trying to find a solution, but you're unclear, if you start adding more and more and more to your plate, it's going to get further away. But if you remove yourself and you create some space and you can move some of that stuff off, you can start to see what's underneath it. And that's not the best analogy, but it's the one that came into my head because I'm hungry. And so that's one of the best ways to get a different perspective. And I always recommend that when you do space, like when you practice space, that you're practicing presence, right? Breathe, go out for a walk, do a walking meditation, sit with somebody and be present. No phone, no distractions, but create actual space that will allow you to shift your perspective. And so the number one way to start to get clear or in momentum or in movement to create the results we want is to sometimes do the exact opposite of what we think, which is instead of doing more, it's doing less, and intentionally creating some space so that we can get clarity and realize that it looks a little bit different than we think it does because we're in the weeds. And so number one is space. Okay. So number two, what's the second thing that we have? We have capacity. We have capacity. And the first note I have is you're not going to get the results doing the same things that aren't bringing you those results. And I watch this all the time. People get really romantic about what they're doing, so they keep doing it even though it's not working. And here's the truth about business and marketing and entrepreneurship. 9 out of 10 times what worked yesterday is not going to work today. And so we have to have this platonic relationship with how we show up, with the work that we put in, the strategies, the tactics, the ideas, because just because they work today doesn't mean they're going to work tomorrow. But when we can start to remove the codependency on those things, we can start to see patterns and principles that we can carry over and change all the time. But we will never get ourselves out of the situation we're in by doing the same things that got us in. And so we need to find ways to shift what we're doing, to iterate, to make adjustments or course corrections so that we can head in the right direction. And so maybe it's delegation. Maybe it's hiring someone out. Maybe you can automate the thing that you were doing. Maybe it's one of those things that you no longer need to be doing. But we have to have the capacity for new opportunities in order to be able to execute on them. And so one of the biggest things we do in our mastermind and at our events is I help people identify all the things that they should no longer be doing to get to the next level. And typically when we start to identify those things, there's only really 3 things you can do. You can either do it, like it's something you should keep doing. You can delegate it, i.e. hire somebody to do it, or automate it, or you can delete it because you no longer need it to sustain this level and get to the next one. But I have this thing, and it's really crystal clear. I am not against the hustle culture. I am all for the hustle. I'm all for the grind. But hustling, grinding without focus is an addiction and a distraction. I'm all for hustling and grinding with crystal clear intention on where we're going to spend our time. But that never comes from just continually keeping our head down and running through wall after wall after wall expecting it to work. We have to pick our head up. We have to look at what's going on, and we have to be willing to make adjustments. And the more adjustments that we can make and the more we love that process, we start buying our time back and increasing our capacity. We increase our capacity for more. Maybe it's more meetings or more interviews or more podcasts, or maybe we increase our capacity and our ability to hold what we have so we can do more. But you're not going to be able to make a shift or make a difference if you just keep piling stuff on. And so space, the first one, is what gives you the clarity of what's needed to try to get back some of your capacity. And so you create space and then you find all the things that are there, and then you start buying your time back to increase your capacity. And that's number 2. Number 3 is then you fill your tank. Then you fill your tank. I'm going to tell you right now, mindset is 95% of this game, because you can meet 100 people, and if you meet all of them and you're in a negative mindset, you're scarce, you're down, they're not going to give you opportunity. But if you meet people and you're excited and your tank is full, they're going to trust, know, and like you and be willing to do business with you. I see this energy transmuted through social media and marketing and email all the time. Like, you can read somebody's email and be like, God, they do not feel good. You can read somebody's social post and be like, man, they are not happy. And when we read those and feel those are not things that we engage with. We're not going to be like, oh, they're unhappy, let me give them my credit card. And typically it comes because in the game of entrepreneurship, the first thing that gets sacrificed is ourselves. And that is the worst thing to do, because we're the weapon. Like, we're the secret weapon in this game. And how we are and how full our tank is what really determines our success. It determines the mindset in which we go after problems. It determines the feeling that people have when they listen to our content or watch our videos or in meetings with us. And the only way to do that is to fill our tank. And so you create space, and then you buy your time back with capacity, and you have a non-negotiable in your day every single day that you fill your tank. Like, you prioritize you over everybody else, because you need to energetically be prepared for new opportunities. Because an opportunity does not do you any good if you can't execute on it, if you can't attack it, if you can't go do it. And so what are some of the ways that we can fill our tank? Well, as a 38-year-old adult, I have realized that I still need to be reminded of most of the basic stuff. And I have realized in my career as an entrepreneur, both when I have been struggling and when I've been succeeding, the first thing I've sacrificed is myself. And those are the things that start to derail my progress. And so what are the things that we need to make sure that we do every single day, regardless of what's happening in the business, to ensure that we have the best possible way to win? Is filling our tank with these things. Sleep. If you don't sleep, you're not going to perform. You're not going to think well. It's not good for you. And if I hear one other person, myself included, say, I'll sleep and I'm dead, I'm going to lose it. Because I used to say that. And the truth was, I ended up with adrenal fatigue, reverse cortisol production, and a whole slew of problems. And I had no results. I was basically addicted to the grind, but not really doing it with any focus, and nothing was happening. My weight was suffering. My stress was through the roof. I was grinding my teeth. And I was sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night and thinking it was enough. It's not enough. I do not want to build a multi-million-dollar, 8-figure, 9-figure business and then die a year after it's done because I didn't take care of myself. So sleep, 1. Nutrition, 1. I'm going to summarize this one really easy for you. Shit in equals shit out. You can eat candy and drink sodas and energy drinks, and you're going to have crappy performances. The best entrepreneurs, the most successful people prioritize their race car over everything else. That's why it performs so good, and it's part of increasing your capacity. Number 3, exercise. You have to move your body. Just walk every day. I don't care if you go lift weights or do whatever, but just move. Go for a 20-minute walk, a 40-minute walk, a 60-minute walk. Movement and exercise is your gift. It keeps you healthy. It keeps you going. Another one, spend time alone. Another one, spend time in nature and do a nature bath. Do something that scares you. Spend time with your kids and family. Think about everything that feeds your tank. Go shoot guns. Go for a hike. Go swimming. Only you know what fills your tank. In my world, the non-negotiables are feeding your body with sleep and nutrition and exercise, and then feeding your mind with intentional consumption every day to make sure that you're setting yourself up to win. And other than that, you have to pick the opportunities to fill your tank. But if you have kids, you're going to have to realize that they're not going to be in the house forever, and they're going to age and they're going to grow. And so, yeah, we hustled till 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. every night or 11 p.m. and didn't see them. But if you look back and you ask them like, hey, if you could have daddy do anything today, what would you want? I'm pretty sure my 4-year-old's not going to tell me to go back to the office. And that's what fills my tank, is that I don't need to hustle and grind like that. I can be more intentional and focused and have memories with what matters, because I'm never going to get them back. My buddy Larry Hagner, who runs the Good Dad podcast, a dear friend of mine, said this really alarming quote that really caught my attention. And I don't remember specifically, but it was around this, that said, basically, by the time your children are 8, 80% of your one-on-one time with them is already gone. And it was something around that realm, because then they're getting into activities and sports and school, and then they turn 18 and they're out. And I'm like, my son's 4 and I'm about to cry right now, and I lost it. And my daughter's 16. And so I think about that and I was like, I am not going to sacrifice myself, sacrifice my sleep, sacrifice my body and work 18 to 20 hours a day alone and isolated to build something that doesn't even give me what I want, which is time, time and memories of my kids. And so I look at that now as a way to kind of keep myself in check. And so you have to fill your tank. That's number 3. Number 4, gratitude. Gratitude, 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 gratitude. And this one is probably the most challenging one for me. And I struggled for years to try to find positives under stress. I had struggled for years to try to find any gratitude when things didn't go well. But it was actually my inability to practice gratitude that literally kept me stuck. And so people want to grow their business, right? They want to scale. They want to make more money. They want to get more customers. And most times I see that coming from a place of, I don't have enough where I am right now. And so that's just a Band-Aid on a symptom and not the real problem. Once my business is X, I'll be able to Y. I'll start doing this when I start getting here. And basically, it's this constant programming over and over and over and over that what I have is not enough, which means the only way to see the business is not enough. And that, by the author Jamie Smart, is called toxic thinking. And you get to stop that right now. Even if you're doing it now, stop. If you've never done it, great, don't. If you've done it in the past, don't do it again. Your business will never sustainably scale if we're just running from problems or avoidance because we can't see where we are. An amazing book recommendation on this is called The Little Book of Clarity by Jamie Smart. But you have to practice gratitude. You have to take time now to intentionally practice gratitude for what you have right now. Be thankful if your business is struggling. It's teaching you a valuable lesson that you can take forward with you. Like I come in now and I look at the business like, oh, that broke. And we're like, cool. Well, now we know exactly what we have to fix for next time. This isn't working. Cool. I have a crystal clear roadmap of what I need to put into practice to make it work. Be thankful that you don't have all the tools and resources right now because it's going to make it much leaner once you can afford all the bells and whistles, right? Like I've seen people with like 800 pieces of software. I love when people can't afford expensive software because it gets down to what actually moves the needle, which is the content, the message, the offer, the audience, right? Be thankful that you get to work daily because one day when your team has it all handled, you're going to be missing those days. And trust me, I've been there because you have to find meaning in things. Like we do this because we love what we do. But every day I wake up, as hard as it is sometimes, like I'm just grateful that I woke up and that I had a breath. And yeah, things happen all the time. I got kids, I got multiple businesses, we got horses, we have snakes, we have businesses over state lines, we got companies run with me not there. Like every day is always something, but I don't look at it as firefighting anymore. I look at it as opportunity. And I am nowhere near where I need to be. That's even bad framing. I'm nowhere near where I get to be when it comes to gratitude, but it's something that I realize the more I practice, the more everything around me seems to be easier, makes sense, and my perspective is spot on. And so for me, it's one of the easiest ways to get into momentum and to have a practice around becoming the person that I want to become to have the results that I want to have. And so that's number 4. And then number 5 is my big one, the one that I preach more than anything, I coach more than anything, I talk about more than anything, and it's called containers. And containers are simply you putting intentional things in place to protect the space that you create for yourself. Scheduling time into your calendar for stillness and for meditation and for movement and for conversations and protecting it like your life depends on it. Like you have to keep appointments with yourself like they were your highest paid client. Because that integrity with yourself, that container with yourself moves mountains. And I watch people, myself included, used to do this all the time. I would schedule things in for me. And then when work came up or opportunity came up, the first thing I sacrificed was me. And then I would get upset that the deal didn't close or the result didn't come, but it never could have. Because just the nature of accepting it meant I sacrificed myself and I was out of integrity. And so containers are huge. Like if you say you're only going to work till 6 p.m., no matter what you feel like, you have to stop and you have to honor that so that you can go release and do the other things that you've committed to be into integrity to come back the next day. If you say you're going to get up at this time, that means not hitting snooze, getting up. And if you keep hitting snooze, you have to have an integrous conversation with yourself. Like, am I not sleeping enough or am I just not getting up? And you have to get to the bottom of that. But our job is to set ourselves up to win. And what I realized about myself is that if I'm just left to my devices, I'm not really going to succeed. I'll get up whenever I want. I'll kind of put some effort in. I'll have a list of things and I'll procrastinate for 4 hours and then be like, okay, now what do I do? And then I never get them done and I have all this pressure. But by simply the night before getting my meals prepped and setting my alarm and saying, this is when I'm going to the gym and this is when I'm recording this and this is when I'm doing that podcast and this is when I'm taking the meeting and that's when I'm doing my stillness practice. I'm creating a container to hold myself accountable to what I said I wanted so that I can't take any backdoors out of my success. So I can't take any backdoors out of building the person that I want to build to have the results that I want to have. And containers are the secret to doing that. And so to summarize all of this, Alex nailed it, and he nails it at such a deep level for me, is that we don't have the results that we want because we haven't become the person to achieve them. And I love that. And that means that when we get them, then we're going to have to build a new person with new habits and new structure, new practice, and new processes around what we do. But these are my 5 biggest ways to get into alignment or into momentum in building that. Number 1 is space. Number 2 is capacity. Number 3 is filling your tank. Number 4 is gratitude. And number 5 is having tight containers. And so I want you to take any one of these things. And the one that you're like, oh, I don't do that. Oh, I don't do that. I don't do that. Whatever that one was, I want you to make a pact with yourself that you will start that one today and put it into practice for at least 7 days. Just pick one. You don't have to do all of them. Pick one. And put it into practice. We all know, like, if you're sitting here listening to this and you're like, I have it all figured out, you should stop listening to my podcast. Because I will tell you right now, none of us have it figured out and we all have to practice. I have friends that literally are worth like $500 million and they're like, God, I need more meditation. I need this. If you have it, quote unquote, all figured out, you're in a bad place. Get ready because a storm's coming. So if you're listening to this and you do, don't send me a message. But if you don't and you own that you don't, I want you to pick one thing and I want you to make a pact with yourself and make a commitment that you're going to do that one thing for 7 days. And I want you to DM it to me on Instagram. Like I said, I will be your accountability partner. Send it to me on Instagram and send me what you're doing and how long you're doing it for. And I will say, yes, go. And I will be your accountability partner. You're not going to message me every day, but I will see you. I will support you. I will encourage you. So you have to DM me on Instagram what you're going to do if you want me to respond. My Instagram is It's George Bryant. So shoot me a message with the one thing that you're going to pick from this that you're going to put into practice for at least 7 days. And then I would challenge you to keep it going. But whenever you get to a point in your business, in your life, anywhere, and you're like, I'm stuck, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know what to do, I want you to pull the ripcord. I want you to come back to this episode, or I want you to come back to one of these 5 things, and I want you to immediately put them into practice and reinstate the integrity with what's important, and then use that momentum to build into what you're going to achieve next. And that's what I got on today's show. And hopefully I remember to hit record. I'm checking right now. Let's see. Did I? I did. Good job, George. I hit record. So that's what I got on today's episode. It has been another episode of the Mind of George Show. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for listening. If you have not reviewed the podcast, please go review the podcast. And like I said, please take something from this episode and put it into practice and shoot it to me on Instagram. And by the way, we are about halfway sold out of all of our event tickets in October. That's October of 2021. And so I will make this really easy for you. If you want to grab one of the last seats before we do our next push to sell them out to the public, shoot me a DM on Instagram that says event ticket. I will send you all the information that you need, and we'll make sure it's a good fit for you to come party with us in Montana, to focus on time, sales, and retention, to ethically scale your business and rocket fuel everything that you have. But other than that, I am going to go. hold my container, end this podcast, and get back to work. I love you all. Have a beautiful day. Remember that relationships always beat algorithms, and I will see you in the next episode, or you will hear me in your earballs. But here is the outro.